China just built a motorhome that is apparently making luxury mansion owners nervous, and once you hear the numbers, you will understand exactly why. This vehicle carries a second floor, a glass-walled lounge, a walkout balcony, and its own elevator, selling for around $413,000. You heard that right. An elevator, inside a motorhome, moving people between two full floors while the vehicle sits parked at a campsite. That is roughly a tenth of what a mansion elevator alone costs to install in most major cities. And it is not the wildest part of the build. If engineering that should not exist yet interests you, hit a quick like and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how one automaker turned a delivery van into a rolling two-story house. So let's start with the industry it walked into. For more than half a century, the motorhome industry settled on one basic shape, and it settled there for good reason. A single-story cabin, built low and long across a stiff steel chassis, keeps the center of gravity close to the road and the whole vehicle predictable at highway speed. That shape did not happen by accident. It happened because every constraint the industry faced pointed toward the exact same solution. Engineers love the single-story layout because a flat, unbroken roofline spreads weight evenly across both axles. An even weight distribution is the difference between a vehicle that tracks straight in a crosswind and one that wanders across the lane. Manufacturers love it because a fixed roof means one welding jig, one assembly line, and thousands of identical shells rolling off the floor without a single moving joint that could someday leak or fail. Governments love it because a vehicle under 13 feet 6 inches tall clears nearly every bridge and tunnel in North America without a second glance from a regulator. And height is one of the few numbers nobody gets to negotiate on the road. Picture a shipping container, sealed and rigid, engineered to survive being stacked and hauled across an ocean without ever changing shape. A classic Class C motorhome runs on that same stubborn logic, succeeding by refusing to change shape at 55 miles an hour and refusing to change shape at all. So, if a two-story version of that same vehicle sounds like an obvious next step, you have to ask why nobody built one that actually worked before now. Here is the detail most people miss about an RV factory. Every gasket, every wiring run, every water line is designed around a shell that never moves again once it leaves the plant, refined by decades of trial and error across millions of miles of real-world driving. That is not laziness, it is expertise, hardened into habit. But the same rigid logic that made the industry reliable for 50 years was quietly setting a ceiling on what a motorhome could ever become. It can only grow once it stops moving. So why did an entire industry spend 50 years accepting a ceiling nobody seriously tried to break? Because until recently, nobody building motorhomes was competing against an actual house with an actual second floor, and that comparison was about to blow the ceiling wide open. Here is the flaw that 50 years of clever engineering never actually solved. A motorhome can only be as large as its footprint allows, and the moment a buyer wants the feeling of an actual home, rather than a well-organized box, the entire category runs out of road. This is not about comfort preferences or personal taste. It is about a hard mathematical ceiling that no amount of clever cabinetry was ever going to lift. The average Class C motorhome offers somewhere around 190 square feet of usable living space, which is roughly the footprint of a single-car garage with a kitchen crammed into one corner. Meanwhile, the average newly built house in the country has climbed past 2,500 square feet, close to the size of an entire basketball court, measured out on the ground. That gap, over 2,000 square feet, is not a design choice. It is the physical difference between a vehicle and a building. And for 50 years, nobody found a way to close it without simply making the vehicle too tall, too wide, or too heavy to legally drive. The consequence showed up everywhere except in the marketing brochures. Buyers paying well over $100,000 for a top-tier motorhome were still sleeping in a space smaller than a hotel room. Because the industry had optimized every inch of a shape, it was no longer willing to question. Here is what most people never think about when they picture a luxury RV. Price kept climbing while square footage stayed almost completely flat, which meant the value proposition of an expensive motorhome was quietly getting worse every single year, not better. There was a second cost, harder to put a number on, but just as real. Families traveling together for weeks at a time kept hitting the same wall. One shared living area with nowhere to retreat for privacy, no separation between a workspace and a bedroom, no room to simply stand and stretch without stepping over someone else's feet. Manufacturers tried sliding walls, fold-down bunks, and clever storage tricks for decades, and every fix was rearranging furniture inside a box that could never actually get any bigger. So the real question was never whether someone could build a wider motorhome. It was whether anyone could build a taller one without breaking the height and weight rules that kept every motorhome legal on public roads in the first place. In 2020, engineers at a major Chinese state-owned automaker began answering that question with a design that was harder to dismiss than anything the RV industry had seen before. The company behind the answer was not a scrappy startup chasing a viral idea. SAIC Motor, one of China's largest automakers and the parent company behind the Maxus commercial vehicle brand, assigned engineers to a specific challenge: take an existing delivery van chassis and turn it into something that behaved like a house the moment it stopped moving. The team unveiled its answer at a company event in Shanghai in 2020, calling it the Life Home V90 Villa Edition. The core idea sounds almost too simple once you hear it. Instead of building a taller vehicle, build one that only becomes taller after it parks. Previous attempts at multi-level campers had tried exactly that for decades, using canvas pop-tops or telescoping frames borrowed from tent trailers, and nearly all failed the same way. Fabric roofs leaked in heavy rain, and telescoping metal frames flexed and rattled at highway speed because they were never rigid enough to trust above 60 miles an hour. Here is the detail that makes the Maxus version different. Picture the hydraulic scissor lift that raises a stage riser at a concert, a flat platform that rises perfectly level, no matter the weight on top of it. The V90 uses that same principle turned on its head, a sealed hydraulic roof section that lifts a glass-walled second floor straight up out of the vehicle's body, once parked and stable. While driving, that structure locks down into a low reinforced shell no taller than a standard delivery van, keeping the vehicle fully legal on ordinary roads. Two hydraulic slide-outs handle the ground floor separately, pushing the walls outward by roughly 2 feet on each side once the vehicle is stationary. Combined with the roof lift, the two systems turn a compact van shell into 348 square feet of livable space, without changing a single exterior dimension while the vehicle is actually moving. Getting a person safely between floors created its own small puzzle, and the team solved it the way an apartment building does. Rather than a ladder or a folding staircase eating into tight floor space, engineers installed a single-person elevator inside a narrow shaft built into the cabin wall, no larger than a phone booth, running on the same basic screw-drive mechanism found in home stair lifts, just scaled down and turned vertical. That single choice, an actual elevator, is what nobody in the traditional RV industry had ever fully committed to. It moves quietly, floor to floor. The question left standing was whether that machinery could survive years of real use through heat, cold, and thousands of miles of vibration. Here is the number that has to come first, before anything flattering. All that hydraulic machinery, the roof lift, the elevator shaft, the reinforced glass walls, adds a meaningful amount of extra weight to the vehicle. An industry analyst who tracked the Maxus commercial platform estimate the added systems push total curb weight up by roughly the equivalent of a compact sedan sitting on the roof the entire time. That is not a small number for a vehicle already carrying water tanks, batteries, and furniture. But here is what that number actually means in practice. A large Class C motorhome was never built for fuel economy in the first place, and owners of vehicles in this weight class already accept modest highway mileage as the cost of the category. The added weight barely changes the actual experience of a trip, because nobody buying a 348 square foot home on wheels was cross-shopping it against a compact hatchback for its miles per gallon. The trade-off that sounds alarming on a spec sheet quietly disappears the moment you look at how these vehicles actually get used. There is a second honest limitation worth naming. Every moving part, the hydraulic roof, the slide-outs, the elevator, is one more system that eventually needs servicing. And mechanical complexity has always been the quiet tax that luxury vehicles pay for their party trick features. Most people never think about maintenance history when a vehicle looks this impressive on stage, but every additional hydraulic seal is a future repair bill waiting patiently in the driveway. Here is the detail that flips the entire comparison around anyway. Because the V90 is built on a van-sized chassis rather than a full-size American Class A frame, it keeps a noticeably smaller footprint while driving, a tighter turning radius, easier city streets, easier parking, all while still expanding into 2 full floors the moment it stops. That combination, small on the road and large at the campsite, is something no oversized American Class A motorhome has ever managed to offer at the same time. That advantage already has a use case nobody expected. In parts of China, similar Maxus platforms have shown up as mobile showrooms and pop-up retail units, compact enough to navigate narrow city blocks, yet able to unfold into a full presentation space on arrival. The question was no longer whether a 2-story motorhome could physically function. The question was how quickly the rest of the industry would be forced to respond. In October of 2020, SAIC Maxus rolled the finished Life Home V90 Villa Edition onto a stage in Shanghai, in front of journalists and dealers who had shown up expecting a van and left describing a house. Within days, the domestic price settled at 2.68 million yuan, which converted to right around $413,000, roughly what a small single-family home costs in several mid-sized Chinese provincial capitals. Attendees who walked slowly through the finished cabin that day described a level of finish closer to a boutique apartment than anything they associated with a vehicle chassis. The field matched the forecast. That distinction matters more in this industry than almost any other. A rendering can promise anything. A computer animation can make a roof rise smoothly every single time. But a physical vehicle that drives onto a convention floor under its own power and folds itself open in front of a live audience is a fundamentally different kind of proof. Engineers noted that the hydraulic sequence performed identically in front of cameras as it had during closed-door testing, with no visible hesitation between the roof lift and the slide-out extension, a detail that matters enormously to buyers who have watched plenty of concept vehicles fail to survive contact with reality. Part of what made this achievable at scale was a manufacturing decision made long before the public reveal. The Villa Edition trim runs down the exact same assembly line as the standard commercial Life Home V90, which meant SAIC never needed to build a dedicated factory just to produce a single showcase vehicle. Coverage of the launch spread quickly beyond China, picked up by automotive outlets across North America and Europe within weeks, all working from the same publicly archived specification sheet SAIC Maxus released alongside the reveal. One outlet that covered the launch called it simply a townhome-grade RV, a description that stuck across coverage archived from that season. If a working elevator inside a motorhome surprised you, the next part is going to be even harder to believe. So hit subscribe now so you are there when we get to it. It started with one flagship trim, where publicity and brand positioning mattered more than production volume. And it spread outward from there into showroom vehicles, presentation units, and mobile offices built on the exact same underlying platform. The claim now had receipts. More than a dozen major automotive and lifestyle publications across North America and Europe ran full features on the V90 Villa Edition within 12 months of its reveal, an unusually widespread for a vehicle that, at the time, was not even for sale outside China. These were not passing mentions buried in a roundup. These were full technical breakdowns, specification tables, and side-by-side comparisons, treating a Chinese camper van as a serious engineering story rather than a curiosity. RV Travel, one of the longest-running trade publications covering the American recreational vehicle industry, broke down the hydraulic sequence panel by panel and explicitly told its own domestic manufacturer readership to pay attention to features like the ceiling-mounted projectors and the transparent screen technology. Rob Report and CarScoops both ran detailed feature coverage within the same reveal window, treating the elevator not as a gimmick, but as a legitimate first for the production RV category. New Atlas, a publication that tracks emerging vehicle technology globally, called it Class A space inside a Class C shell, a distinction that mattered enormously to anyone shopping in that price bracket. None of these were Chinese state media repeating a press release. These were independent Western outlets choosing, on their own, to treat the vehicle as a serious story. Here is the detail that puts the timing in context. The reveal landed during a period when Chinese provincial governments were actively expanding self-drive tourism infrastructure, building new campground networks and highway rest stops specifically designed for larger recreational vehicles. In any market where the roads and campsites are being built faster than domestic manufacturers can fill them with vehicles, a company willing to build something genuinely new is not chasing a niche market. It is filling a gap that policy had already started widening for it. The specification sheet SAIC Maxus released alongside the reveal remains publicly archived across multiple outlets years later. Square footage, weight class, and price all independently verifiable, rather than quietly scrubbed from the internet, the way many concept vehicle claims eventually are. That kind of staying power is rare for a reveal this unusual. And it raised a much bigger question that had nothing to do with press coverage at all. If one flagship trim could pull this much sustained international attention while selling in a single country, the obvious next question was how far the underlying platform could actually scale. Industry researchers placed the value of the global recreational vehicle market at more than $50 billion a year, a figure roughly the size of the entire global video game industry. And China's share of that market has been the fastest growing slice of it for most of the last decade. A platform like the Villa Edition is not chasing a fringe hobby. It is aiming at a market already large enough to reshape a national manufacturing sector on its own. There is a real secondary benefit tucked inside that growth curve. Every Villa Edition built on the standard commercial Maxus assembly line represents one fewer dedicated factory needed to enter the luxury segment, which keeps capital costs down and lets a single production run serve both budget delivery vans and six-figure show vehicles side by side. That kind of manufacturing flexibility is exactly what allows a company to experiment with an expensive flagship trim without betting the entire business on it succeeding. But turning a promising technology into a global standard is a long road, and it is important to be honest about where that road gets genuinely difficult. The vehicle is not currently certified for sale in the United States, and clearing federal motor vehicle safety standards for a vehicle this unconventional could take years of dedicated engineering work rather than a simple paperwork exercise. There is no dealer network anywhere outside China capable of servicing a hydraulic roof lift or a vertical elevator shaft, and building one from nothing is its own multi-year undertaking. Import tariffs on Chinese-built vehicles in markets like the United States have climbed sharply in recent years, adding real cost before a single unit ever reaches a lot. Right-hand drive conversion would be required for markets like the United Kingdom and Australia, a non-trivial re-engineering task for a vehicle this mechanically complex. And every additional hydraulic system is one more component that eventually needs a trained technician who does not yet exist in most Western repair shops. None of these challenges change what the design already proves is possible. They define the gap between what one factory in China can already build and what will actually reach driveways around the world. Closing that gap is a regulatory problem, a logistics problem, and a training problem as much as an engineering one. The team behind the V90 gave the industry a working blueprint. Whether the rest of the world adopts it at the speed curious buyers clearly want is a different question entirely. The story of a motorhome with a working elevator is ultimately the story of what human civilization can build and where it can build it. For most of history, comfort like this required staying still, a fixed address, a plot of land that never moved. This space traveling with you, folding small for a city street and opening back up at the next stop, is a genuinely new relationship between mobility and comfort. That relationship is not equally available yet. Right now, this engineering exists almost entirely inside China, sold to Chinese buyers, serviced by Chinese technicians. A family in rural Iowa or coastal Portugal cannot walk into a dealership and order one. And the same is true across most of Southeast Asia and Latin America. What is genuinely new here, not incrementally better but categorically different, is a vehicle that can legally shrink to fit a city street and legally grow into a two-story home once it stops moving, without breaking a single rule of the road. That is not a minor improvement on the pop-up camper. It is a different category of vehicle entirely. The engineers at SAIC Maxus gave the world a working blueprint for that category. Whether the rest of the global auto industry picks it up at the speed curious buyers clearly want is a separate question, one that belongs to regulators and dealers as much as the engineers who built the first one. That is new. Shifts like this compound over time in ways easy to miss in the moment. A vehicle category that redefines what living space means tends to pull an entire industry with it within a decade, the way the first minivan reshaped a market that once insisted the old shape was the only one that made sense. If watching one engineering team rewrite an entire vehicle category has you wondering what else is being reinvented from the ground up, there is another story just as strange waiting for you. BYD's newest car skips a separate battery pack entirely because its engineers turned the whole body of the vehicle into the battery itself. And that story is the subject of our next video. BYD's new car has no battery pack. They made the entire body the battery. The link is in the description. If this changed how you think about what a motorhome is allowed to be, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Turn on notifications. We publish every week. Now I want to hear from you. If a rolling two-story home like this showed up in your driveway tomorrow for less than an average house costs, would you buy one? Or does a home that drives 55 miles an hour make you nervous instead?